Okay, please can you hear me? Hello, Peter, please can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, please you can go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Pankyes from PMO Income Global. Today, we'll be looking at the topic titled Effective Stakeholder Management in Project. Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, please, I'm not seeing your screen.
Sorry. Can you see it now?
No. I still cannot see your screen.
Okay, I think it's sorry, it's network issue.
All right, I can see your screen now. All right, please, next slide.
Okay, hello, Peter, can you see it now?
Yes, I can see your screen now.
All right, thank you.
All right, you can just move to the next slide.
Okay. Hello, Peter, can you see it now?
Yes, I can see your screen. Okay. We'll be looking at the next slide. Hello.
Yes, I'm moving to the next slide.
All right. Just like I've said earlier, today we'll be looking at effective stakeholder management in project. So, how can we effectively manage stakeholder? For us to effectively manage stakeholder, there are two key elements that we need to consider first. Number one is to, first of all, identify who our stakeholder is or who our stakeholders are. And then secondly, we need to kind of find a way to engage this stakeholder or stakeholders. Okay. So we need to, first of all, identify the stakeholder. And then secondly, we need to find a way to engage this stakeholder. So this is because stakeholders play a critical role in the success of any project, and understanding how to manage their needs and expectation is key to achieving project goals. So when we identify who are stakeholders, are or who our stakeholder is, and then we engage these stakeholders, it gives us the ability to understand their needs and expectations, and as well we can in turn effectively manage these stakeholders. Okay, so in this presentation, we will be exploring the strategies and best practices for successful stakeholder management with real-world examples and practical insights. Okay, so please, next slide. Okay, the word project is derived or is or the origin of the word project is derived from the Latin word pro, and pro simply means forward, and gesture means to throw. So these two words are put together to form the word project. So that is how the name project came to be. It's actually a Latin word, pro and gesture, that are put together to form the word project, as we have it in English. Okay, so a project, in simple term, is defined as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service in order to achieve a particular outcome. Okay, so when you talk about project, there are three key things that need to be included in your definition of project. Number one is it has to be a temporary endeavor. And secondly, it must have a unique product or service. And then lastly, it must have an objective, or it must have an outcome or a result or goal. So if your definition of what a project is missing any of these key terms, that's when your definition is incomplete. So a project must be a temporary endeavor, must have a product or a service, and must be goal oriented, or must have an objective. So that is what a project is. And on the other hand, we have a stakeholder. Who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is someone who has interest in a particular project or company or business, and can also either affect or be affected by the project or business or even company. So anyone who can be affected or who can affect a particular project or business and also have interest in that project or business is known as a stakeholder. Okay, for instance, in your community, the government want to construct a new road. They want to construct a new road in your community. And for them to construct this road, they need to demolish some buildings, some houses. So those people who will be affected by that demolition must be stakeholders of that project. They are stakeholders of that project because that project has affected them. So that's just a basic example of who a stakeholder is, because they are being affected by that project, by that road construction. So they are stakeholders in that project. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's look at how we can identify stakeholders. How can we identify stakeholders? We can, one of the ways in which we can identify stakeholders is through a document called the project charter. Okay, the project charter is a document that has all the necessary information that concerns the project. Okay, so this is one of the ways in which we can identify a stakeholder. When you want to know who your stakeholders are, you can just visit the project charter, and then the project charter should have a list of all the prospective stakeholders and all the stakeholders that are involved in that project. Okay, so this is one of the ways in which we can identify stakeholders through visiting the project charter. Another way in which we can identify stakeholders is by reviewing the enterprise environmental factors. Okay, these are factors such as culture. As we know, there are cultures that there are some cultures that influence decision making. Understand? So this is a good example of environmental factor that we can use to identify stakeholders. Some of these factors include communication flows and project resources allocated. Okay. Another way in which we can identify stakeholders is by interviewing the influencers of that particular project. Also, another way in which we can identify stakeholders is by asking questions like carrying out research and all that. And another way that we can also identify stakeholders is by involving prospective stakeholders in that particular project. We can also identify stakeholders by effectively communicating with prospective stakeholders. And lastly, we can identify stakeholders by defining mechanisms that govern changes in the project. Okay, so there are different kind of stakeholders. The stakeholders could be owners of the project, could be customers, could be government, could be the employees, could be lenders, could be suppliers, could be members of the community, could be the society. So all these people can be stakeholders in a project. Okay. All right, let's move to the next slide. Now, type of stakeholders. Basically, we have two types of stakeholders. We have the internal stakeholders, and then we have the external stakeholder as well. Okay, for the internal stakeholders, the internal stakeholder comprises of persons such as the employees, the managers, the owners of the project, the executive committee of the project, the steering committee of the project. It comprises of people who have or who have invested so much or a lot of interest in the project. So these people are termed as the internal stakeholders. They are known as the internal stakeholders. And then we have the external stakeholders in the other hand. The external stakeholders include people such as the suppliers, the society, creditors, customers, and all that. Like customers who have interest or who can be affected or the project can affect. So these are known as the external stakeholders. Okay. Please, next slide. Now, stakeholders engagement. All right. How can we engage stakeholders? How can we engage stakeholders? Well, like I've said earlier, for us to effectively manage our stakeholders, we need to first of all identify who our stakeholders are. So it's the same thing with engaging stakeholders. For us to identify stakeholders, we need to first of all identify the stakeholders, and then and then it can be possible for us to engage the stakeholders. If we don't identify them, there's no way we can engage them. So first of all, you need to identify the stakeholder. And then secondly, another way that we can engage stakeholder is through the stakeholders mapping. So the stakeholder mapping is a tool that facilitates how you can place your stakeholders based on the level of their interest and influence. Okay, so this square that we're seeing that has 4 quadrants is an example of the stakeholder mapping. Okay, so we have an arrow that goes upward, and then we have another arrow that is lying at the bottom of the quadrant. Okay, the arrow that goes upward depicts the interest, and then the one that lies horizontally is the one that is simply depicts the influence. Okay, so there are 4 quadrants here: 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the first quadrant, which is high interest and then low influence. Okay, so this kind of stakeholders have high interest in the project, and then they have low influence. And then on the second quadrant, we have stakeholders that have high interest, but high interest and high influence. So this kind of stakeholders in this quadrant, is expected that you regularly engage them. You need to always keep them satisfied. And then we have the third quadrant, which depicts stakeholders, excuse me, stakeholders with low interest and low influence. So these stakeholders is expected that you provide them essential information concerning the project, and then you don't need to frequently contact them. Okay, and lastly, on the fourth quadrant, we have stakeholders who have low interest and high influence. They have low interest concerning the project, but they have high influence on the project. So this kind of project, what is expected of you to do with them is to you monitor this kind of stakeholders regularly, and also anticipate their needs. Okay, so that's how the stakeholders mapping works. So it is a tool that facilitates how or you can place your stakeholders based on the level of their interest and influence. Okay. So another way that you can engage stakeholders is by understanding their needs and expectations. Also, we can also engage stakeholders by providing them with regular updates or information, by giving them a kind of two-way two-way feedback concerning the project. Okay, and we can also engage stakeholders through conflict resolution. Okay, I know maybe you'll be wondering, how can we engage stakeholders through conflict resolution? Well, we can engage stakeholders through conflict resolution in the sense that sometimes when there's a project that is going on, or a project is about to take place, there might be some kind of argument, there might be some kind of dispute. So when scenarios like this happen or occur, there's a need for the project manager to look for a way to provide solution in order to settle this conflict. So in the process of settling this conflict, he needs to get somebody in that community that is well respected, or permit me to say, he needs to invite somebody that as we usually call, okay, he needs to invite a senior man, somebody that is well respected in that community, to come and resolve that particular conflict, that dispute, that argument that is ongoing. So the process of inviting that respected personnel to come and settle the dispute, the person has indirectly involved that person, the respected person in the project. So that has made the respected person to be a stakeholder in that project. So he has indirectly engaged the person. So it makes the person a stakeholder. So that is how conflict resolution can be ways to engage stakeholders. Okay. And then lastly, we have celebrating milestone. It's expected that you celebrate milestone at when you have your project going, and then when you achieve a certain maybe height in your project. Okay, when you invite people to come and marry with you for a successful phase of your project, you are indirectly engaging those people in your project. So that's another way of engaging stakeholders as well. Okay. So quickly, sorry, because of time, let's move to next slide. The next slide, please. Okay, stakeholder management. Well, this is very important. Okay. What are the ways that we can manage stakeholders? Well, for us to manage our stakeholders, I've said this earlier, and I'm going to say it again. We need to first of all identify who this stakeholder is, or who these people are. Another way that we can manage stakeholders is by engaging these people. When we need to engage them, because if we don't identify and engage them, there's no way we can manage them. Okay. So, and engaging stakeholders entails respecting them, communicating with them, reviewing their expectations and needs, involving them all throughout the project phase, or at each phase of the project. Okay, so these are ways that you can engage stakeholders. Okay, We can also manage stakeholders by using the mapping template, just like I've explained not long ago. The mapping template helps you to place whatever kind of stakeholder different positions. You know which particular stakeholder you need to keep very, very satisfied. It helps you to know which particular stakeholder you need to manage very closely. It helps you to know which particular stakeholder you need to monitor. It helps you to know which particular stakeholder you need to keep informed. This is based on their influence or power and the level of their interest. Okay, so that's how the mapping tool work, or the mapping template rather. Okay, and lastly, we can effectively manage stakeholders by agreeing on roles and goals of the project. Okay, so these are the various ways in which we can identify stakeholders. So stakeholder management is the process by which you organize, monitor, and improve your relationships with your stakeholders. It involves systematically identifying stakeholders, analyzing their needs and expectations, and planning and implementing various tasks to engage with them. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay, let me just explain this cycle, the stakeholder management cycle. Please move a little bit upward. Yeah, this is stakeholder management cycle or analysis. Okay, so this helps you to have a definite order in which we help you facilitate how to effectively manage your stakeholders. You can start by identifying the stakeholders, documenting their needs, analyzing their level of influence or interest, managing their expectations, taking action, reviewing and repeating the whole process all over again. So a stakeholder management cycle can help you have a better and effective management of your stakeholders. Please, next slide. Okay, I think we have come to the end of our presentation. Okay. All right. In conclusion, effective stakeholder management in project provides valuable insight into the critical role of stakeholders engagement in successful project execution by emphasizing the importance of understanding, communicating, and collaborating with stakeholders. I believe we have gained a deeper understanding of how to navigate the complex web of interests and expectations as we move forward. Implementing these strategies and best practices discussed in this presentation will undoubtedly lead to a more successful, collaborative, and efficient project outcomes. So ultimate benefiting all parties involved in the project. I think we have come to the end of this presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for the presentation. Please, do we have questions for him? Do we have questions on effective stakeholder management in projects?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. So I'm in a noisy place, so I will try to avoid the noise that's coming from my background. So my question is this: from your explanation, you said um stakeholders also include those that are being affected. For instance, bridge construction or road construction is taking place, and some residence building are being demolished at the cost of that construction. So I want to understand because from the definition of the stakeholders you gave us, there are those that have interest in that particular project, and in a way, it is going to benefit it's going to be beneficial to them. So those that are affected during the construction of that road, how are they stakeholders? I would like you to explain that, please.
Okay, if I understand your question correctly, you're talking about uh, the example I gave with the road construction, right? The people whose house are being demolished, how are they stakeholders in that project?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and from the definition of the stakeholder I made earlier, I said uh, I mentioned three key things like is that the person, the stakeholder, a stakeholder is somebody that has or is a party that has interest in the project or business, and also someone who is affected or who the project might affect. Okay, so these people are stakeholders because their houses cannot just be demolished just like that. The project managers or the people that have that project must find a way of meeting them. They must kind of have a conversation. So the process of meeting, identifying these people and conversing with them, dialoguing with them, make them to be stakeholders of that project because they are affected. So that makes them to be stakeholders in that project. I don't know if that is clear.
Yeah, I understand now. Yeah, in progress. But if they are settled and perhaps the settlement or maybe in kind of anything given to them outweighs the cost of their property, they have a higher advantage there. Maybe they might be in kind of distress at looking for a new apartment or so. Thank you very much. I got it.
All right, so thank you very much, everyone. It's already time, so we'll have to end the stand up here. Thank you very much, Peter, for the presentation. Though we didn't get to see your face while you were talking.
Okay, I sorry about that. My apologies, please. This is because my room here is very dark. There is no light. So
All right, it's fine. Okay, do have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you very much for being around today.
all right, thank you too.